In the door with the culture code. Also, podcast Behind the Door with Wyatt. Ooh, and sample pack as well. Link below, full of useful things and stuff. But this is In the Door. So let's go in the door.
3 guests today. We got Culture Code, Chris Baines. We got Brendan Nilsson, who, fun fact, we are starting a new series called In the Whip. And the WHIP stands for Work in Progress, and it is a live stream through Twitch where we invite artists to come and talk about their whips. And we have people come and, you know, give advice on the whips and everything, and it's freaking awesome. Brendan, do you have anything you want to say about it?
The channel's called Thick Boy Thunder, and it's going to be freaking sweet. You can hop on, ask your favorite producers questions as they're creating the song. So, I mean, this is awesome. You get to see finished products, but this is where you get to see your favorite producers in action, creating it in real time, giving feedback, asking questions.
We're going to do one with Clockwise and Vorso. Oh, that's nice. Is that a door opening? So I highly encourage you guys to go check that out. And then, the most important guest of all this day is my son. I have a baby. Hopefully he's going to be quiet. If not, it'll be adorable.
How do you find LFO tool compared to, say, Kickstart or doing normal sidechain compression?
I just felt like you've got more control with LFO tool. With Kickstart, you've kind of got just the dry wet knob and you've got the different presets. But LFO tool, you can really sort of delve into how much you want it to curve and how quick you want it to come back up versus how long you want it to stay down. Yeah, I find Kickstart really good if you know exactly what you want it straight 4/4. LFO tool for more control.
Your leads are very catchy, they're very sonically pleasing, they're very poppy. So I'm curious as to how you go about selecting a lead. I feel like that's a very important part of your sound.
When it comes to leads and melodies, I always start tracks from the beginning. I'll do it progressively, and on the build-up, I kind of have a melody idea in my head that I know will sort of suit the rest of the song. A lot of the times, it's actually stemmed from the vocal, like certain notes I'll use in the actual melody of the drops. So in terms of finding the leads, I'll start off with a really sort of crappy sound, and then I'll keep changing sounds until I get the one that fits, and then that's the layer I start with, and then I build up and down from there. Sort of fill it out.
So with Phil again, what synthesizer did you use to create the lead?
I think it was Silent for the main.
Is that kind of your go-to?
Yeah, Silent. Yeah, Spire's cool. Yeah, I mean, this is the main lead here. It doesn't sound that great on its own. There's a couple more layers that go with that. But they get complemented by the chords and the piano. I'll already have the chords there as well, so it sort of complements everything else around it.
So are you more of like find a preset you like and tweak it, or do you completely sound design these yourself?
No, I mean, when I first started about 5-6 years ago, I'd sit there for hours making my own sounds, and it just didn't suit my workflow at all. I mean, I'd make some really cool sounds, but then I'd got none of the song done. If you spend too long on a certain section, you can lose the vibe, and then I ended up not finishing songs. As you can see here, this I Would Like preset, I used that in my Zara Larsson remix. So I've just put that in here and I've tweaked it to fit this song.
Because there is basically 2 schools of thought, right? One is that you create all your sounds, you use them. The other one is that you use presets. And I guess a kind of a third one, which is kind of in the middle of there, which is you find presets and then you tweak them. On an artistic standpoint, I don't really care what you do. Art is art. Does people make their own pencils when they go and draw? No, it doesn't. If they do, I mean, that's kind of cool. But do you get a hard time from the producer community because you do that, because you go and find presets? Or most people don't care?
I find most people don't care. I mean, you get certain people that do, and I get that because, like I say, they spend hours creating their own patches, and I really do admire that. It just never worked for my workflow. I mean, I'm really stuck for time. As I told you, on Facebook, I've got my daughter, and last year I was actually working most of the time as well. So for me, time was a big deal. So to get tracks finished, it was all about finding my sort of sounds that's worked with me, and tweaking them to make them a bit more of my own, layering them up so they don't sound exactly like that preset on its own, if you get what I mean.
Why would you reinvent the wheel if so you have a starting point, you know, what you could have done in an hour, but you can get it in a second and then, you know, then grow from that. Why go back? That's my opinion. So do you have a specific like place you like to look for presets? Is there like a unique website or place that you get a lot of your sounds from?
I mean, Vandalism's cool. I like Vandalism a lot. Lately though, I've been using a lot more of like Omnisphere. I'm really feeling like real world sounds and stuff. Even layered on top of my drops, I think it gives it a more organic feel. Apart from that, Nexus is cool. I use Spire a lot as well now. Synthmaster's pretty cool as well.
How long would a track like this take? And is that pretty normal for your tracks, or do some tracks take longer than others?
I think this one was relatively quick. It had another vocal on it before, but because of political issues, I couldn't go forward with that. But the melody actually come from that old vocal. So it all came pretty quick because it was quite natural. But then finding a new vocal that fit, and when Harley came along, he just nailed it straight away. But until then, it took quite a long time to get it completely finished because I had to do a bit of working around after Harley come on it as well. But yeah, some tracks, I mean, finishing off a remix of Dua Lipa at the moment, which will probably be out by the time this video comes out. That has took so long. Like, it's had 3 or 4 different drops to find the right one that works.
And how many hours do you reckon you put into it? Are we talking more 15 or more 50 or 200 or 300 hours, do you reckon?
Probably took about a month back and forth at the studio.
How did you process the vocal? The vocal sounds so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, Harley did most of that himself, and then he sent it me over, and I had wet and dry, so bits where I needed to do my own effects like reverb and certain delays to fit with the track. I've got them all bounced out here because it was in a different project. I use the Valhalla Room reverb on vocals, the Waves CLA vocals, which gives it a nice stereo effect, and I just use Ableton standard ping pong delay.
And do you just throw them straight onto the track, or do you do sends?
No, reverb usually straight onto the track with a dry wet balance, so I can control that. Delay, I'll usually put on a return so that I can add a compressor to that and compress it so that when the vocal's being sung out loud, the compressor brings the delay down, and when the vocal stops, it comes back up.
When you put the Valhalla Room onto the vocals, or anything for that matter, is there a certain setting that you do, a certain preset that you adhere to?
I'll show you guys that now. So I've set up my own chain. It's called Verb Rack. It's basically this chain here is just dry. This is my wet. It's got the Valhalla Room on it and an EQ, because Valhalla Room doesn't have an EQ. So, and I don't like really putting reverbs on sends. I don't know why, it sounds a bit different to me. So this is how I get around that.
So the 2-chain rack is your poison of choice?
Yeah. You know, Kashmir does his splice tutorials.
Is this what you have right here? Is this a custom made preset, or did you go and grab one of the presets?
No, this is custom made. It's the one I always load up straight away.
And so you've been using this specific one for quite a while?
Yeah, I mean, I put it on there. I adjust the EQ to taste, and I adjust the decay to taste, depending on what kind of sound I'm going for. So I'll load in the Valhalla Room reverb, and right now you've got the dry wet. So you leave that at 100. You group it, and you open the chains out, and you create a new chain. So essentially this chain on top will be dry, and this would be wet. And then whatever effects you add to this wet chain will not affect the dry chain. Yeah. So it's essentially like a return channel without actually putting it on a return channel.
Ableton calls these chains when it would kind of be more accurate to call them layers almost. They're parallel layers.
You mentioned you had a daughter, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. My wife and I are having our first kid in June.
Congratulations.
And then Wyatt has a couple kids, and then Adam, he's just flying solo. So I just got a question. I feel like when you have a crazy life, you have so many responsibilities, you know, music really is an escape. And I feel like there's certain parts of creating music that really just stokes you. You know, you just get so excited, it just pulls you in, and it's your thing. You know what I mean? So what, like, in this song just like gets you so stoked? What in this song like really spoke to you and just like pulls you in and just like, I don't know, made you feel good? Just the drop itself. I mean, it sounds so sort of happy. If you know what I mean? You got like you got the woo samples going on, and you got the dun 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 dun. It's almost like you said, it's poppy, but it's kind of cheesily happy as well. It's got a nice sort of flow to it
with the way it corresponds with the chords. So yeah, that's what really spoke to me with this track, was definitely the melody.
I struggle like massively when I'm creating tracks on finding the right type of pad to fill the space. So what do you do like to find the right pad to fill your space? I think that's really important for creating the ambiance that you have.
I do focus on that a lot. I mean, especially in my melodic dubstep stuff as well. I really try and focus on the emotion of my tracks. So there's one here that I really love, and it kind of works with any sort of genre. This is from Gladiator. I had to bounce it down though because the CPU was going crazy. But if you add this on top of anything with the right notes.
Oh yeah.
Take that away. This is kind of dreamy, isn't it? That's just two notes of those chords just held out the whole time.
So do you layer like a higher kind of like tingly pad on most of your stuff?
Oh yeah, I always use that. I like to use strings a lot as well, and I've got one here doing pretty much the same thing.
Would you mind breaking down those chords and kind of like how you got that sound? I know there's like a cutoff filter on there and stuff. How did you get to that like balance of where, you know, it was cut off and everything like that?
I do apologise. I did have to bounce this down a long time ago. As much as it's sort of like you said, it's filtered down, I did feel like it was missing something on the tops. So as you can hear, it's kind of got a bit crush sound to it. I'll show you on this track how I did that. I always use the erosion in Ableton. There's the redux as well, but I feel like you've got a lot more control with this one. On the sine setting, so if you move this filter up and down, you can really dial in on the bit crush sound that you're looking for.
Dude, that's exactly what I've been looking for, man. I feel like Redux is just too hard to mess with sometimes, and it doesn't fit right. That's super cool.
The Redux doesn't have like a dry wet either, does it? Like, you're either bit crushed with Redux or you're not bit crushed.
Oh, totally. Another good one that I like is Serum Effects. If you go into and click over a little bit of time in the presets, they have a downsample. And that's a good one as well. But I really like that erosion, dude.
Yeah, it's got the white noise on it as well, which does a sort of similar thing. They're all just little tips to, you know, fill out the top end when you don't want to keep layering up sounds. So I would have started with this one. And then I would have found this as well, which to me is a lot more solid. It's a lot more down the center, whereas the first one's filling out more of the stereo field. So together. Which are really complemented by the ARP as well.
So how are you doing your color organization there? I mean, I can see the effects are all the same color. How else are you grouping?
So I'm putting any sort of intro, breaks, and outro. I have them orange. All my drums are purple, vocals are pink, and for some reason I've always had sub bass as brown just to sort of section it off from any other bass because I want that on its own. I have bass blue, and then I have, well, they're meant to be orange, but because they're frozen, they're looking a bit weird. And then I have melodies blue. It just really helps me to be organized and see where I'm at in the tracks, because they can get a bit messy, can't they?
And do you end up grouping or busting things out normally, or do you keep it pretty separate?
So in this one, I usually have a few of these. I'll have like, but because I started on Ableton 10, and you can really group stuff now a lot better. But before, I'd have a load of black channels, and it'd be like bass, chords, melody, and then there'd be an all bus where all 3 or 4 of those go into to do some post-processing. Like I'd have the isotope ozone on there so I could do some stereo imaging and keep the bass in the center, widen out the tops. And yeah, it sort of glues it all together as well, then it makes it sound as one.
Totally stealing one of Adam's questions, because last time you stole one of my questions. Is there something that you did in this track that technically was wrong, but it actually worked really well in the context of this track?
These are sort of standard techniques that I use quite a lot, so it's hard to say if I'd find them wrong if I was doing them so much. I don't usually have vocal shout samples though, so that's new for me, like with this here. But that just kind of really suited the drop. That was one of the differences from my usual stuff.
Over the course of the last year of you producing, what has been the most mind-blowing thing that you figured out how to do? as far as production wise?
I mean, that chain was a biggie because I've been struggling with reverb on sends for a long time. You sort of like, when you was boosting the send, you was losing a bit of the input and stuff like that. And when I came across that was a big one for me.
Adam, is there any, like, do you know any science behind that? Why using the sends would sound weaker?
You're not the first person that's mentioned that. It's one of those things, strictly speaking, there's no reason why it should do. But then again, software, which is always imperfect. So
I don't know if it's just an Ableton thing or not.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be anything from placebo effect through to it actually being different. And to be honest, it's really hard to tell why. It's like, for example, sometimes if you pan if you take a channel and duplicate it and pan one left, one right, strictly speaking, if they're the same channel, you shouldn't hear a difference because it's the same coming out of the right. But sometimes you can. It does sound different for whatever reason, almost like the internal architecture gets a bit confused or out of sync. So there's a chance, for whatever reason, I must admit, I don't know why, you do get a different result on the return track. But
I mean, it's just always sounded different to me. I've always preferred putting the reverb straight on, but it kind of always annoyed me because then I couldn't add any EQ, because anything I'd EQ would affect the whole channel then. Yeah. So when I found that was like, okay, that's solved that problem that's been bugging me for so long.
Absolutely.
Did you think of anything else that blew your mind the last year?
Serum. I didn't really pick. I was late on the Serum train, but yeah, I've really got into it this year. I thought it was more for like harder stuff, so that's why I sort of stayed away from it a bit. But you can get some really cool sounds on there. I mean, I've got orchestral packs on there and stuff now, and it's a really good and solid synth.
What are some of the rules you have to stay inside the style that you, I don't know, claim as your own?
I mean, I make such a varied sound. I go from melodic dubstep to future house. So I've got so many different influences. I always try and delve in on the emotion. A vocal's a big thing for me as well. My tracks always really got to be very vocal. Most tracks that I start with the vocal and I build around that. That's just the way I've always worked.
So when working with a vocalist on a track, I feel like a lot of, at least from my experience, having talked to a lot of producers on Twitch, and like they're almost like afraid to work with vocalists. It's like kind of like a difficult communicating what you want, how make sure that they're vibing on the song. So your vocals are obviously a big part of your music. I mean, it's very at the very forefront of it. So how do you find working with vocalists, making sure they have the right message for the song, making sure it's the right vibe? Like, what do you do? How do you convey that? And how do you make sure that you're satisfied with it in the song, that it fits, To
be honest, I just think it's a two-part thing. You've just got to be honest with each other. A lot of the times I'll actually tell the vocalist before they start what kind of vibe or what kind of message I'm trying to get out there. But then it is a lot of compromise because they might come back and be like, okay, well, could you turn this bit of the vocal up because they were really happy about that part of the vocal and it's not standing out enough for them. And then it's a two-way thing. You've got to compromise.
So how do you go about setting the level of the vocal in the mix? Because obviously in pop music, the vocal's much louder relative to everything else than it is in dance music. So how do you kind of come up with the position there?
I'll put it too loud, really hear it's too much, bring it back down from there. Find a nice balance between the instruments bit and then the vocal on top.
Tell me about your kick. I'm always interested in finding the right kind of kick for this style of music.
Yeah, well, I mean, this kick, as you can see, it's from my Zara Larsson remix. The Zara Larsson remix was the first time I tried Future House, so I kind of knew that this kick could work immediately with this song as well. But the way I usually go about my kicks, and the good thing I like about Ableton, is the fact that like no one kick is going to work for every song, if you know what I mean. I'll have the drop playing, and you can literally swap the sample as the track is playing.
I've never even thought about doing it that way. That's so efficient.
That's why I do all my drums in MIDI, because I've learned that nothing is going to work for everything. And if you've got them all in audio and it doesn't work, you've got to take all that audio out and replace it. Whereas this, it'll swap it on the spot and saves a lot of time.
If you woke up tomorrow and you could release this song again, is there anything that you would want to do differently before re-releasing it?
I think I'd want to have maybe like a vocal chop here at the end. That's one of them, you listen to a song like a month after and you're like, okay, that bit could have had a little more to fill it out. That's what I would do to this track.
The type of people that are going to be watching this video are bedroom producers people who are trying to improve their skills to be more like you. Basically, they're looking up to you. What advice would you give, when they're in their DAWs, they're in their bedroom, grinding? What would you say to them relative to what's important, what to focus on as they're growing?
Like beginners or people that have already sort of got their sound?
Probably some of both.
I mean, you can never stop developing and growing your skills as a producer. I mean, I'm still learning new stuff all the time. But one thing that really helped me, especially is finding like how to do different genres and stuff to widen your sort of spectrum, is to recreate songs that you think are really good, by top producers. You can find their sort of secrets that way and then apply them to your own tracks. I used to do that a lot when I first started. I'd take my favorite song and I'd spend an hour recreating as much as I could of it. And I'd be like, okay, that's how they did that. I'm going to try something similar in my next track now.
So you just would pull the track in and then just kind of...
Yeah, I'd mute the track and then I'd say they had a synth there. I'd recreate that synth as close as I could using new effects, try and see what that effect does. Okay, that effect brings me closer to that sound. Now I know what I need to do on future tracks to get that sound.
That's awesome. That's really good advice.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most powerful technique to learn almost that basic song structure as well. As simple as it sounds when you first start producing, you don't even know that maybe even the snare happens on the 2 and the 4, even as simple as it sounds. I mean, it took me about a month to even get to that stage when I first started to produce. So yeah,
a big thing in song structure is like transitioning as well, effects, and like I had like risers coming in. And I was like, okay, that's how they bring it from one section of the track to the other. You sort of implement these techniques in your own stuff.
What did you find most difficult when making this track?
Getting the piano right. I've never really used piano on the drop before, so it was just getting it to fit with the chords and the melody and the bass, because it was something new. But I'm glad I did it now, and I had to try a lot of different pianos until I found the one that fit.
Was it a case of just trying piano after piano until it kind of resonated, or did you have to process it to get it there?
It was about that, and it was also about finding... When I first started, I had the piano doing the same notes as the melody, the dun, 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 and it just didn't sound right, and I figured out after a while that the notes in the piano were clashing with the notes in the melody, and that's why the melody wasn't standing out, and that's why the piano sounded a bit weird, because it was just doing notes that it didn't really sound right doing. So as you can see here, it's just sort of like straight chords now instead. I was just going to say as well, and finding, it does actually make a difference how long the notes are as well, especially in this type of music. And as I said, this was a new sort of genre for me, so it was just figuring out new techniques that I didn't necessarily have to use in my other music before.
Would you like our feedback on your song?
Please do.
I have not really feedback, but just kind of more of an idea as an extension. So I think it'd be really cool to take this and almost create like an acoustic version almost of it, because it's such a cool melody that I feel like you could almost like strip out the dance music parts, almost like run with the vocal and run with the melody. Yeah, more of just a general bit of music.
That's a really cool idea. I'm actually talking with Harley about that.
Something I really liked about this track is I feel, you said it's future house, but at the same time, it also, it didn't sound like a lot of future house that I'd heard. I feel like you kind of made it your own. I don't really have any feedback, just I like that. I thought that was really cool. And in fact, when you said this is future house, I didn't even
click.
I didn't recognize that, like, oh yeah, this technically is future house.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool. So I would just keep that up. I like how you're kind of that is something I've liked about your music, is although it's recognizably within a genre, it definitely feels a little different. And I think that comes from, cutting pieces out that are normally in that genre. And I just like that. So I don't really have any feedback. I'm actually a huge fan of your style. So yeah, you're great, man.
So my feedback for you is that it's an absolutely amazing song. It's very, very profoundly well done. There's no denying that it is a very quality song. I found, however, that the melody to me, of course it was beautiful and it fit the genre very well. I felt a longing for something new, because so like this type of melody that happened in this track, you can find these type of melodies, in quite a few other tracks. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. That's not to say, that's not to make fun of you or anything like that. That's just how it is. Something that I found recently to help me write new melodies. This is like absolutely amazing, and I can't believe anyone else doesn't really know about this. How often do you use your Max for Live devices?
Not often at all.
Go through them. So really quick, go ahead and click on the Max for Live portion over on, okay, you see right there where it says Max MIDI effect. So if you click on that, so you do have some. This is good to know. You don't have all of them, so that with Ableton they come with a bunch of them. But within there, the MIDI effects, they're insane. Ableton obviously, and it's just normal MIDI effects that it has, not the Max for Live ones, but just the normal MIDI effects. They do have some really, really cool stuff in there. But the Max for Live ones, these are like alien weird, let's say, you know, you had a chord sequence, whatever, you can go and you can throw a Max for Live MIDI device on it and it will mangle it so beautifully. And then you could resample that MIDI into something else. And it just, like, I've found that it gives me really unique. Basically, it's an AI writing music for you. Sometimes when you're not feeling inspired, you don't know what the melody is. You're like, I don't know, let's just give it a shot. So,
I mean, I do something similar with the arpeggiator. Yeah. If I'm ever looking for an arp and I can't sort of nail it in my head what I'm looking for, you put that on your chords and it will sort of sequence it for you.
Yeah, exactly.
The ideas stem from that.
I love doing stuff like that. You know what I mean? Basically having Ableton do some creative work for you when you need some help feeling inspired. Final, most important question. Did you have a good time?
I had a brilliant time. Thank you for having me.